Head out to your big box store. Don't feel overwhelmed. I have free plans in the description that will walk you through everything you need. Check the wood to make sure you get the straightest pieces. You only need 8 pressure treated 2x4s and 23 cedar fence pickets. For the garden beds themselves, we're going to have some cedar pickets. I love cedar pickets. If you've seen any of my other videos, once you sand these down, it's really hiding a really nice grain. And your other option is the pine pressure treated fence pickets. And if you just go to your big box store and look, you'll see the cedars are obviously a better looking piece. So I love getting these and being able to just do a natural finish over them and let it show the grain. If you plan on painting this whole thing, then you could save a couple bucks by getting the pine ones. But for this build, I'm going to end up looking at it and seeing the grain and doing a clear finish. So I want the better pieces of wood. Now for the framing and the trim pieces, we're going to use pressure treated construction lumber, pine lumber, 2x4s. Now, pressure treated specifically made for outdoors. So when you're doing outdoor projects, definitely use pressure treated. Cedar is a very good outdoor lumber, but if you need anything for structural, you're not going to use the cedar. You're going to want pressure treated. The steps we're going to take for putting the paint on the 2x4s and the sealant on the cedar is we'll go ahead and get the 2x4s. We'll roll on some paint here. So while they dry, we can sand the cedar fence pickets, and then we can put the spar urethane on the fence pickets after those are dry, so we can start cutting those as the cedar pickets dry. I'm going to be using this Valspar exterior black paint, just matte black. Nothing too special other than it being exterior. We just want to get a good layer on, just make it easier when it comes to the actual finish. We don't have to try getting every little crevice. We just got to do some touch-ups. Which I love these throwaway trays. I just bought a stack of like 50 of them. And then I don't have to try worrying about cleaning out any of my good trays. I keep that somewhere we're not going to knock it over. With this pressure treated lumber, you're going to hear, you probably heard people talk about letting it dry out before you put any finish or sealant on there, which is fine. You can definitely do that. The way I've always been taught, the way I'm going to do here is go ahead, don't worry about the time. Go ahead and seal it whenever it's time to seal it in your project. Go and paint it whenever it's time to paint it in your project. And theory we've always worked through is that all it'll do is cause it to dry out slower, which in turn will keep it from cracking. So we've not had any issues, decks built and everything. But if you feel more comfortable waiting, go right ahead. Now while those dry, I'm going to go ahead and sand the cedar fence pickets that we got here. I'm just going to use 120 grit sandpaper. And I'm just going to do one face of them, just the face that's going to be looking out of the garden planter, just because they're already kind of thin. So you don't want to thin them out anymore. So just do one face, the face that's going to be seen. Pro tip, keep your wood drying upwind from where you're sanding. As you're sanding these boards, pay attention. You're definitely going to get some that have some curve in them, maybe some concave. So you always want that part for almost everything in construction. You'll want to think like this. You want that part down for almost everything you're doing to it. But we want to sand the higher side here, because then once we cut these, we actually put them in place, the screws will pull them straight, as opposed to being this way, you're going to get an inner bow. With your sander, most of the time you're going to see this variable speed option. Now I know whenever I got my first sander and stuff, I was wondering like, why would you ever not have it on high? Why would you ever want it to take longer? So really, why this is here and what could happen is if you're running it too high for your species of wood, it'll clog up this, so it won't be able to pull out the wood fast enough. So your 120 grit becomes 300 grit sandpaper instead. So actually slowing it down can make the sanding process go faster. Now that being said, I still run it on 6 all the time. All right, cedar pickets all sanded. Now I'm going to put a sealant coat spar urethane on. Now you could skip this step if you really want to. Cedar's a type of wood that's very good for outdoor use without rotting. But I went ahead and had some extra spar urethane, so I thought an extra layer of protection wouldn't hurt. All right, as we let those dry, our 2x4 should be all dry, so we'll go ahead and build the frame. Now we're getting locked and loaded to cut some frames. So you can cut these all out with your miter saw if you have one. Really, obviously any saw, but I'm gonna use the skill saw that most of you guys have at home. We're gonna be making our frame, long rectangle, 5 feet long, 2 feet high, and the side slats we're gonna want to be inside of the top of the frame. So we know the top frame is gonna be 5 feet, so we're gonna cut 2 5-foot pieces and then 2 more 5-foot pieces because we got to think about the other side of the box. So in total, if you're building one, you're going to want four of these 5 feet pieces, and then our inside slot that'll be right here. We're going to want it to total up to 2 feet. So you just got to remember a 2x4 is actually 3.5 inches. So 3.5 inches, 3.5 inches. That gives you 7. So then 24 minus 7, you got 17. So these inside ones here are going to be 17 to make it 2 foot high. So 5 feet, 5 feet. Now, if you're cutting on sawhorses, you want to be careful. You don't want to cut in between them. That'll just cause these to cave in and bind on your circular saw, possibly get some kickback. So just have it so your cut piece can fall right off. You can keep your speed square out. Go on your line with your circular saw. Bring the speed square up, and then just follow along so you don't have to pay too much. Perfect. Same deal here. So now we know these are good, 5 foot and 5 foot. So we've got those cutoffs there, which we're going to try to use as our 17-inch pieces. So that's perfect. These come out to about 36 inches. So we'll be able to get 2 of these out of here. Now when you're measuring something out like this, you're going to do your 17 inches here, and then flip your tape measure around and do your other 17 inches from the other side. Because if I were to measure 17 and then bring it up and do the 34, well, I'm not accounting for the 1/8 inch that we're going to lose on the circular saw. So it's just easier, instead of calculating it, do it that way and then do it from this way. All right, we got our cuts. If you want to mark on the back that these are your 17 inchers, and you can also mark whether this is going to be your front, if it's a good looking one, or your back. So then once we get to the part of putting all these together, you can easily match up your fronts and your backs. You've got your 4 5-foot pieces and then your 8 17-inch pieces. There's double the amount of 17-inch pieces just because you have to use those on the side frame too. So coming out of that 8-foot board, that comes with very, very little waste, just 3 or 4 inches off of each end. All right, take your 17-inch pieces. You got your 8 of them. And then this is what we're going to put our pocket holes into. And the top frame won't have any pocket holes. They'll all be in this one, screwed up into it. So we'll want 2 pocket holes that way, 2 pocket holes that way, 2.5-inch outdoor Craig screws. So just set your thing back on 1.5 inches. So now you'll have them coming out like that. The ones that we're going to leave like this are the ones that are going to be your front facing. So choose the ones you think are going to look the best and set those aside. All right, my 4, and then these other 4 are going to get pocket holes. Say 3 of them right here, and that's going to be able to connect it to the side frame. You got your 3 holes drilled for the side. They'll be shooting the screws this way. So we've cut most of our frame pieces, but we've got the one more base plate and top plate to do for the depth of the garden bed. So the depth I'm wanting is 16 inches, but we got to remember we've got a front plate and a back plate that we've already cut out, those 5-foot pieces. So the 2x4 is actually 1.5 inches, not 2 inches. So you'll have to take 1.5 inches and 1.5 inches off of the 16, making it 13 inches. So we're going to cut them at 13 inches, and we'll need 4 of them. Now we can start putting together the frame. Now we'll go ahead and lay it out and screw it together. I'm going to do it over here in the sun because it is freezing this morning. I don't like the cold. So we'll start with the front frames. So we'll go with 2 5-footers and then 2, what did we cut those at? 16? Is that what it was? Now the 2 16 pieces you want are ones that just have the 4 Craig holes on it. The other ones where we shot the ones down the side, those will actually be for the side. So don't use those for these bigger pieces. Clamp it up, make it easy for you to shoot it. If you don't have clamps, just go get some. You're gonna need them for every project pretty much. It'll at least make them all easier. You will see some clamps are expensive. There's no doubt about that. I got these black ones from Harbor Freight for next to nothing. So I suggest going there because some clamps, they really are expensive. I showed you the box, but make sure you get the blue Craig screws. Those are for outdoor. They've just got the protective coating on them so they don't rust and break down. All right, frame 1 done. Another frame down. Now we can move over to our little frames. What you got to remember is that these screws are going to be shooting into the front and back frames. So don't get mixed up on your orientation here because they look like they're shot over here, but the screw's going to be going this way. So make sure to have these on the inside so that the screw can go out. All right, now we got our frames completed. Next step is going to be, before we box them together, we're going to go ahead and get the cedar pickets cut and then put in place. Now the pickets are going to just go right here all the way down. So we'll take this measurement, and it looks like about 21 inches. Gets us about halfway through each 2x4. So this cut doesn't have to be super precise. I mean, we've got all this room for air. So I'm just going to cut all these right around maybe 21 or 22. And then we'll just screw them all on. I'm going to mark at 21 and a half. That'll be good enough. 21 and a half, then 43. And then what's that get us to? 64 and a half. Make sure it's all it's enough depth. Those 4 boards got a 612. And then grab your pickets and go ahead and lay them out. Same gap on both ends. Looks like we're right at about 2 inches on this one. A little over that, about 2 1/4. So we'll move it about an eighth. Get an eighth off of each one. Go ahead and just shoot them down. For shooting these cedar pickets, I'm going to pre-drill some holes. But I'm also going to use this one that has a countersink bit on it. We're going to put together our box. And then one of your short sides, go back to your 2 1/2 inch Craig screws. Get your Craig bit. You know what I didn't actually think about is the 2 cedar pickets on the side panels can't be there until we actually get this shot. So we can just take those off real quick. But at least we already got them centered. We got the holes pre-drilled, so we'll be able to put them right on without any issue. All right, back on. Now you got it lined with the outside of your face plates. Now you can shoot your Craig screws. One side done. Let's flip it around, do the other. Lay that one on top and try to line it up as best you can. Do one side as lined up as you can, and then we'll be able to maneuver. They have a little wiggle, so you'll be able to maneuver to get the other one lined up. Perfect. Now we'll line up this other side. This side just got one spot that needs pushed in while I shoot it. So you start with that one, get it pushed in, and then shoot the rest. And that caused this one to need pulled out just a little bit, and we should be good to go. Now we still have the last coat to put on all this black framing, so it's gotten a little bit scratched up. That's no big deal. Now go ahead and add your side pickets back in, and this part will be done. Now this next step might be optional for you, depending on if it being open like this works for you for your area. But I'm gonna have some slats put in here so I can be able to set my plants and my dirt on and not have to go all the way to the ground. So if you're gonna do that, we'll just get first the measurement here. Doesn't have to be super accurate. You just want to make sure to be able to hit each 2x4 on the end when you shoot this. So we'll go 56 inches. We're gonna need 2 of those, and then we're gonna cut out some slats that'll just end up setting right in there. I did use the pine fence pickets on that just because they're cheaper. So since it's on the inside, I used the pine. And you want to cut those, it looks like right about 14 1/2 inches. So we'll have a 2x4 running here, 2x4 running here, and then all these slats will just be sat right on top of it. So if you need different levels, you can put multiple 2x4s on and just change the level of your slats for different things you're putting in. Now for the depth of the 2x4s, that's going to be up to you depending on what you're wanting to put in here. Whether you're setting pots in here, then you want to make sure your whole pot will set, or if you're wanting to put dirt in here and plant, then that'll depend on how much dirt you're needing for what you're planting. So just pay attention to that. For me, I'm going to go 10 inches down from the top of this top plate, and then we'll just put a mark. All right, and for this shot, I'm going to use a little longer deck screws, but 2.5 inch for the shooting this, just so we can get through the 2x4 and sunk in enough into the other 2x4. Restart this. There we go. Got it. All right, one slot down. Do the same thing for the other side. I got both of our slots in here. Just cut out a whole bunch of these, somewhere around 14.5 inches each. Like I said, this is the pine fence picket, just a little cheaper for the inside here. Now we're just going to set them in. You don't need much of a gap here. It's just nice to have for water to run down and through. Ideally, I'd like it to be about 1/8 inch each, which, give or take, it's about there. All right, the garden box of it is done. If you don't want to add the trellis and stuff, which we're going to move on to now, then you'll go straight into just doing the final coat of paint. So repaint all this framing black, clean it all up, and then you'll be good to go. Start off the trellis, we're going to get our painted 2x4s, 2 of them 2x4x8, and then we're going to get the measurement of this box marked out on it, and then we can start laying out all the cross members. Looks like 24.25 on both sides. Make sure you get your straightest ones, because going up in there like this, they'll be the most noticeable in your piece if they are turned. All right, first we measured 24 inches on height of the box. So we're going to mark that here because we know that's how high up it's going to come. Now the width between these two is going to be 60 inches on the dot. And that's outer edge to outer edge. All right, I'm going to take one of the scrap fence pickets just to go ahead and lock this into place. We'll lay it across, just shoot some screws. All right, go ahead and check your diagonals. All right, now you can do some layouts, play with it on how you might want to see it look. If you want to cut these fence pickets down, what kind of spacing in between them you're looking for, and then we'll get all the measurements off of that. So what I'm going to do is come down 10 inches or so, measure it out, and start actually the second board from the top, because I'm going to leave it squared with that top one, and then we'll fix the top one. So I decided after we start this one, we're going to want to do 3.5 inches in between each one. So the easy way to do that, instead of measuring, is just grab one of your cutoff of your 2x4s. 2x4, the 4 inch is actually 3.5 inch. So we'll just use this as the spacer, because in carpentry, you don't want to measure. The easiest way to do it is just to find things to build off of. The reason I don't want to start basing it off of this top board we already have shot, it's just because that squared up my 2x4s, but I'm not exactly sure if that's totally square to start measuring off of. So I'm just going to start with the second board, and then we'll come back and measure up to the first board and fix it if it needs fixed. One measurement that we'll start with, we'll go 10 inches. You can countersink these and pre-drill them like we did with the other ones on the actual garden box, but this cedar's honestly really soft, so you can drill into it right when you get to the end. Just go nice and slow, and it'll countersink itself without splitting. If you want to get fancy, you can see how square that comes out to the 2x4. Perfect. So we know that we didn't make a mistake anywhere along the way. As of yet, I'll shoot that down. Beautiful. Now we'll use our 3.5-inch blocks. And we'll just base it right off of that and just go back and forth. Or really, you could just do one side at a time. Now this is the cut piece. Make sure you don't accidentally put it down the wrong way. Make sure you got it on your 3.5-inch side. There we go. I'll go ahead and mark it just so I don't have to think about it. Maybe just a little bit. We'll say a 1/2 inch of an overhang. So we'll mark out a 1/2 inch first here. Now once again, since the 2x4 is only 3.5 inches, you can hook the 2x4, and you'll just know that you need to mark it at 4 inches because that adds the 1/2 inch. All right. Now I left the chalkboard there. All right, now we got our chalk lines down. We're going to use our circular saw just to cut. One kind of cool thing about these circular saws, I was just reading one of Larry Hahn's books, which if you don't know him, he's probably the god amongst carpenters. But I didn't realize there's 2 types of circular saws. One's a sidewinder and one is a worm drive motor. And this one is a sidewinder. You can tell the handle being up on top. And then the worm drive, your handle is actually sitting a little bit back. Usually you can do a little plunge motion and everything too. Most of these sidewinders blades are actually on the right hand side, and you can consider the right hand side blade to be a left-handed one, but it just depends. It's just a different type of cut really more than anything. But now they have the sidewinders like this one with the blade on the left, which is just what I usually like, just so I can see a little easier. But yeah, that's the difference. A worm drive motor and a sidewinder. Make sure your blade's not out far enough to hit the ground. So I realized mine was pretty far out. These boards are just 5/8 thick, so it doesn't have to be very deep. All right. Now that we got this completed, you can go ahead and attach this to your garden box, or you can follow me and take it one step further, and we're going to add some more garden boxes actually to this. Now we're going to build 3 garden boxes to go onto this. Get this thing real quick. So the idea of this is just going to be building a garden box out of these fence pickets, so it's going to be the same width. The length we're going to end up being for these 2x4s and then these 2x4s. I wanted a little bit on the inside of that. I just don't want it to line up so perfectly, you know, give it a little bit of difference. So we know this is going to be 30 inches to the center of this board from there, but we'll probably just do a 28-inch box. All right, I got our 3 nice front facers. Now we'll just have to make our backer boards here. So this one doesn't have to be your pretty pickets, so nobody will see it. Now we'll go ahead and figure out the depth of these. Let's think here. Let's see what we got. 3-inch piece here. Just take our scraps, mark out a whole bunch of 3-inchers. So we'll need 2 for each of them, so we'll need 6. The way we'll do these ones will just be not on the outside of the long piece. We'll do it on top of the long piece. So we're just going to run 2 screws into there, connect it. Same thing for this side here. I'm going to go ahead and bring the back pieces and then all of our side pieces just over here to the table to build this up. So pretty much we're building the box without the front. We'll use the same screws we were using. one down. I'm going to cut these down pretty rough. We know we're looking at 3 inches on the width because of the way we cut our side pieces. And then the inner length is looking like 26 3/4. So I just want it 26 3/4 by 3 inches roughly. It could be a little shorter. We're gonna end up drilling holes and everything, so it doesn't need to meet up perfectly because you'll want water to be able to leak out anyway. So as long as it's close enough to be able to get some screws shot. We're gonna cut out the bottoms to the guard box now. I've got a little bit of a crack running up this board, so we're gonna cut that off first, and then we'll get our measurements. Now we said 26 1/2 inches for the bottom of the box. We got 1, which we're gonna end up splitting in half, so it's technically gonna be 2. 26 1/2. These are 5 1/2 inches wide, so we can cut it to 2 3/4 right down the middle, and that'll give us 2 pieces at 2 3/4. Be perfectly fine. In these, you've got this little groove, so I'm going to try to line this line up so I'll be able to just cut straight down the middle and not have to worry about trying to pick up the board. All right, perfect. We got our 4 pieces. Now you can see exactly how this piece fits. Slide right on in. We'll leave a little bit of a gap. That's totally fine. It'll come up flush with this front. So we'll shoot a screw here, screw on this side. Then we'll also shoot 1 screw on the back side here. All right, back one is secured. Now we'll drive the 2 on the side. All right, 1 bottom done. I shot all 3 bottoms installed. And we're gonna go ahead and install them onto the fence. Once again, we're still leaving the front off, so we're able to access the screws to screw it in. Putting these boxes in, you have to get longer screws. These are 2 3/4 inch screws. I would use definitely nothing shorter than 2 inches, and 2 inches is even kind of pushing it, so I definitely try to find one a little over that. Make sure you line it up so you'll have enough 2x4, enough 2x4 on each side to be able to get a screw into each of those. Back to our smaller screws. Trellis with the garden boxes is done. Now we got to move on to connecting it to the garden box. Beautiful. Now get that board out of here. Yeah. All right, now just walk it to it. There you go. There's yours. Mine's poking out a little bit. Could yours come over a little bit? Here, I'll help you. That good? Oh yeah. We're gonna use lag bolts for this. These are 3/8 by like 2.5, 3 inches. So just get a bolt around there and then make sure to get a couple washers for it. Then we're just gonna pre-drill it. This is a Forstner bit. We're gonna use this. This one's a 1-inch Forstner bit, just to be able to dig into this so we can countersink these in. Now I'm gonna do 6 of them. So we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now since we have the clamps up top, I'm gonna first shoot the bolts on the bottom, pull that tight while this is held tight, and then we'll shoot this. Go ahead and drill these 3 holes, then we'll come back, switch out to the Forstner bit. Now I'm just digging this Forstner bit in enough to be able to sink that head all the way in. So we look good there. Woo!